Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me and I hope you enjoy the show.
You meet someone online and there's this instant connection. It's amazing how much the two of you just seem to click. They live somewhere far away and there's some plausible reason they can't travel to meet you. They tell you they're in love with you and you feel optimistic for the first time in a long time. They have a successful career, yet somehow they need money from you to solve a short-term problem, always with the promise of paying you back. Time goes on and they need more money more urgently. You've started to see the cracks and begin to wonder whether they've been lying this whole time. All of a sudden it hits you. You've been scammed. Fool Me Twice is the story of my mother, Jules Hannaford, a woman who was drawn into the dangerous world of sweetheart scams. After a trip overseas to meet a stranger, a dangerous altercation in a Manchester hotel room, and thousands of pounds lost for good, she's here to tell her story. Fool Me Twice, a true crime podcast, is available on Apple Podcasts, Ozcast Network, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Today I'm here with Valentina Tudose again. Thank you, Valentina, for joining me today.
Hello, Jules.
Valentina is my resident sexpert, and this is about, would this be your 6th or 7th episode on Hong Kong Confidential?
6, I think.
And you really are one of my best sellers. You get the highest number of downloads because everyone wants to hear about sex and relationships. Today, Valentina, we're here to talk about dating in COVID-19. I guess the dating landscape has changed a lot since we all have to either social distance or many people are on lockdown. What's your impression of dating since the virus started?
I think a lot of people see it as a major problem. And it is to some extent because we've had less connection with people, less opportunity to meet with them. And obviously some of the rules have to change because of this social distancing. I think in Hong Kong, we're lucky that we still actually can go and meet someone for a coffee, for a walk. But I've noticed that there is one part that has gone down dramatically, and that is the choice of available matches on dating apps. Because there's nothing new. There's no one new traveling. There's no variety. And even the Tinder algorithm struggles to give you new options every day. So you keep swiping left on the same people. I think both from personal experience and that of my clients, the ability or the possibility of meeting new people has decreased a lot. And if you haven't got a lot of people that you knew from before, what I call a talent pool.
Or friends with a talent pool. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Now what we can do is obviously we can't have big gatherings. We can't go clubbing. We can't meet people in bars. So yeah, it's changed a little bit our ability to continue with meeting new people. However, I think the opportunity in this situation is that maybe some of the things that we used to take for granted with such high level of availability of people can now change, and we can get back to spending a little bit more time getting to know each other before we jump straight into bed with someone that we met on Tinder. So we talked, I think, in other situations about this idea of being in a hookup culture, which had been created by the availability of sex literally at the swipe of a finger on your screen. And with that becoming difficult, I think people are starting to spend a little bit more time getting to know each other, either because they're stuck in quarantine and the only option is talk to the person until you can actually get to meet them in person. So the opportunity for connection is better, or simply just entertain themselves.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that there's less people on Tinder because people aren't traveling, and I guess people aren't putting themselves out there as much at the moment because they want to be careful.
Exactly.
That's something that I hadn't really considered because I thought that people might still be putting themselves out there but changing the way that they date. But maybe they're not really. But it's interesting you say about the travel. Nobody's coming into Hong Kong.
Yeah, there's no new option. So if you're a prolific Tinder user like myself, I've already rejected everyone in Hong Kong 75 times over. It's a bit of a joke, but not quite.
Yeah, sure.
But an interesting phenomenon that I think you will resonate with is obviously all these dating apps are trying to take advantage of the situation, and knowing that people are at home bored with nothing to do. I've noticed both in my own Tinder experience, so to speak, but also talking to friends who are in other countries like New Zealand, Australia, whatever. Tinder has started giving free gold passports, which is the ability to extend where you're swiping. So you can choose the city where you want to play. And right now, as we were talking before we started, my Tinder is full of either, the 10 people that are still left that I have not rejected already, but also a lot of people who are 10,000, 8,000 kilometers away, which obviously are using their free Tinder passports and are swiping all over the world just for fun. And then, of course, the third category is the catfish, people who are now taking advantage of the fact that everybody is like desperate for connection. It's the best time for catfishing.
Yeah, so they've increased, even though in my demographic on Tinder, they're everywhere because they're looking for 50-something-year-old women or men because we're the perfect demographic for them. It's across the board now that there are catfishes in all age groups, yeah?
Everywhere. Like pretty much every single day I report one or two because, as you know, for you and me who are very familiar with this, they're extremely blatant.
They are, but, unless you really understand the red flags and what to look for, you can miss them and you can fall for it. So I think that you should go out and listen to my podcast, Fool Me Twice, or get my book, Fool Me Twice, because there's a whole lot of information on what to look out for catfish and red flags. And in fact, for Fool Me Twice, the last episode, I got a real life scammer and was able to interview him. And I got him by swiping right on everyone on Tinder that I thought looked like a catfish. It didn't take me long.
No, exactly.
It really didn't take me long to find somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So that's something that our listeners should really watch out for while they're at home and looking for a connection and trying to date online.
Exactly. I mean, I've been doing a lot of Facebook Live trainings on catfishing, explaining these red flags. In fact, I tried the week before I did a live on catfishing. And I deliberately, as research, I signed up for this website called dating.com. And dating.com is a scam because I think 100% of the people that have contacted me are absolute catfish, blatantly. One guy, his profile said, I'm from Venezuela. And in the email he sent me, which appeared side by side on the screen, he's like, I'm from Mexico. I'm like, you can't even decide where you're from, you idiot.
Yeah. If you're going to be a catfish, you've got to keep track of your story.
But actually, if you look into the psychology of this, they deliberately make these mistakes to screen out the smart people.
Yes. They're looking for the more vulnerable people who will overlook the red flags.
You know how easy it is to ignore the red flags, right?
You can ignore your gut instinct and push it aside. Oh, maybe he's in Venezuela now, but he was from Mexico. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's easy to think that way.
The one that I reported yesterday, in fact, at first told me he's from New York. And then he was like, oh, I'm in Egypt. I'm like, what are you doing in Egypt? Oh, I'm on the base. Of course, military, the classic military man. And then he was like, I said, where are you from? Like, oh, I'm from Mexican. Oh, really?
Mexican, yeah.
He repeated that twice.
I love it when they say things like, oh, I'm on an oil rig off Hong Kong. It's like,
Exactly.
No, you're not. There's no oil rigs. It's
crazy.
Classic. It's like, do your homework before you get out there and catfish.
Exactly.
I know there are many, but give me a few of the key red flags for catfishing that people should watch out for.
Well, even just from the pictures on the profile, you can tell there's like 2 or 3 pictures, especially if you go on dating.com. The reason I know is like 100% everyone is a catfish is because everyone looks like they're a model. So first of all, if it looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So ladies, don't fall for that stuff. Secondly, actually, you mentioned they use last names as their names. Sometimes they use full names.
Yeah, like John Williamson.
Exactly, right. Or whatever. Or Johnson as their name, like whatever. So it's kind of a style. Obviously, the distance, I had a catfish a few weeks ago who was telling me he's Italian and he was in Japan, but then he now was the captain of his own ship, which killed me. That one.
Yes, I do that. Like if I'm talking to somebody and they're like 6,000 kilometers away and they say they're in New York, you just Google distance from Hong Kong to New York. You find out it's 13,000 kilometers and you know that they're in Africa somewhere.
Well, with this guy, he told me he was in Germany. And as it happened, I Googled Lagos, Nigeria, and the distance was within 200 kilometers of that. I'm like, yeah, Germany, not so much. I said, where in Germany? If you're the captain of your own ship, what are you doing in Berlin? And then the next day he was on the Mediterranean. I'm like, are you teleporting?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, because you can't fly anywhere at the moment.
I know. Anyway, crazy people. Like I said, a profile that has minimal pictures, looking too good to be true, last names, distance from yourself. When you start talking, they call you dear. Oh my God. If someone calls me dear, even if I know them in person, I still want to slap them.
And also using the term God-fearing is another one. Even if you're on a Christian site, people don't necessarily use that term. So it's a sort of extremist. I don't know if it's even extreme, but it's just odd.
It's odd. So they have a few verbal patterns that I love. They always say currently or presently. So I'm presently in Egypt. Who says that? The other thing that they say, which makes me laugh, so dear, or they call you pretty. They say, I want an honest woman, loyal, I'm trustworthy, loyal, all the things that they're not.
Yeah.
If you understand neuro-linguistic programming, because we're talking about that, that's exactly all the red flags that you can look for. Oh, I want only serious relationships, no one-night stands, no drama. I'm like, really, dude, seriously?
No scammers.
Yes,
no
exactly.
catfish.
Exactly. Like, really. The guy that I reported yesterday, literally from hello, how are you? We had a little bit of a conversation. And then he says, do you have kids? I said, no. He says, do you have your own house and cars? I'm like, excuse me? What question is that? He says, oh, I want to know everything about you. Like, really? And you start with my assets?
Yeah, of course they want to know your assets. They want to know whether you're wasting time for.
Well, I deliberately let him ask me these questions because I wanted to report him to WeChat. And in WeChat, when you report someone, you can include the conversation so that they see. And I deliberately, when I say I bait them, that's what I do. I choose them because I know they're catfish and then I get them to tell me all of these things. I don't know why we're talking so much about this, but I guess it's part of the story. And this is what I think people need to be aware of because that's what you get right now in terms of dating. One who started by telling me, I'm so-and-so from Austin, Texas. I don't know why Texas seems to be a big thing for them. That's another red flag. Then I said, okay, of course they ask you, what are you looking for? Blah, blah, blah. And then he said, what did I match with you? You're like so far away. He goes, oh, because I'm looking for a relationship that will lead to marriage outside of America. And I said, why? Were you trying to escape? He says, yeah, because all these women here are not loyal. I'm like, oh God, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just don't have the patience. Speaking of loyalty, honesty, trustworthiness, not scam, wanting only serious women, only serious relationships.
And trying to get off the site as quickly as possible. Let's move to WhatsApp. And then giving you a phone number that's nowhere near related to where they say they are. So because they can buy phone numbers from different countries. But they often say they're in Germany, but they'll give you an American phone number.
The interesting thing about dating.com, this site that I tested, so their format is, in order to talk to anybody on that site, you buy credits. And each message that you send to a person uses up your credit. What these guys are doing on that site, they try to get you to communicate with them as much as possible. So I actually deliberately say, okay, can we move to another site? Oh, no, actually I work for the US government and I can't give my personal message. I'm like, oh, bullshit, dude. It's like, shut up.
That's hilarious. Oh, I didn't know that about dating.com. That's interesting because when I was researching for this podcast, I found some information on dating.com and some of the things they're providing to help people manage dating in COVID-19. But I think they're in my information here. So what are some of the key things that people should consider when they're dating during COVID-19?
Well, I was mentioning that the opportunity is actually to spend more time before you meet someone in person, whether because you can't physically meet them or because, you want to take your time, you're either in isolation and all that. So obviously dating apps tend to be very much geared towards instant gratification. Or you see someone you like, okay, you go for coffee, you jump straight into bed with them from day one. But even those people who are there for that reason, now they don't have that option so much. So what I advise my female clients that I work with is for them to take that opportunity and use the excuse of COVID and social distancing and isolation to actually get more to the bottom of what that relationship is about, and to ask questions and create a connection that is beyond the instant hookup need for gratification.
Because we can't really get to know somebody in a few hours and one night. So
Of
you're
course.
actually getting an opportunity to learn more about somebody than you would under the normal circumstances. So do you think people should date on Zoom or Netflix and chill and kind of use these new platforms or these more prolific platforms that have been created for people to connect?
I think, again, I see this as an opportunity. Of course, physical contact with someone, which is obviously a very important reason why we want to meet someone. Ultimately, we want to have physical connection with them or physical touch. For me, the secret to desire is anticipation, right? So dating on Zoom can be super fun in so many ways because you have an opportunity to see the person. You can see if they're funny, if they're joking, if their sense of humor in person corresponds to their texting game. Because I'm sure you've had the experience that sometimes you have texting exchanges with someone and they sound really smart and the banter is great. And then you meet them in person and you think, who are you? Because you can't be the person that texted me.
It's interesting. You just can't really know somebody online until you really get to meet them. But Zooming with them gets you that one step closer because you can see them.
Exactly. First of all, you can check that they're real. You can check that they're pretending to be Norwegian and they look rather black. And there's nothing against Africans. It's just that we know that a lot of the catfish actually are from that part of the world. So yes, definitely. I know that there's a few startups out there who are now looking to create new opportunities. In fact, I'm talking to a startup in Canada to start. It's called, I think, First Date. I'm going to be hosting online speed dating events.
Oh, that's cool.
Where people can get to know each other. And obviously, if the connection is there within the 3 minutes that you connect with one particular person, then you will get a chance to continue this relationship and build it under the watchful eye of your coach.
That's great. What a good idea.
I think this is a great opportunity for people who are not very good at standing out the first time. You know how important it is to make a good first impression, and learning how to make that good first impression and how to understand that actually sometimes chemistry is a very fickle thing, because obviously chemistry is based on looks, right? But this situation gives us an opportunity to see beyond the skin deep beauty that online dating platforms promote. You look at someone's pictures, you think they're hot, they have nice abs and they look tall. And then they're like this tall. You think, what the hell?
Yeah. All the photos are photoshopped and they're from 10 years ago.
Exactly, right? Or they're not even theirs.
If you were to meet somebody in person during COVID, what are some of the things that you should consider?
Well, I mean, obviously, you need to stay protected. Someone even asked me the other day, how serious are you taking social distancing if we were to go on a date? And I would say, well, I feel that already we have started to not hug and shake hands when we meet people and we keep a certain distance. So I think with this in mind, with the fact that you don't actually know if someone is a carrier or not, you might, again, delay or stop your physical desire. And instead of jumping straight in for the kiss at the end of the date, you might just kind of take it slow.
Yeah,
and
tap feet. That's what a lot of people are doing. They're tapping feet instead of shaking hands or
doing
hugging.
the funny dance.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I don't know if you know, last night, actually, I had a friend who stayed with me and we watched a movie from the 90s called Demolition Man. I don't know if you remember it.
I've heard of it, yeah.
And it's really funny because it is kind of back then in 1993 was a version of the future that is extremely possible for where we are right now. People didn't have any hand contact, even sex was virtual. So there's a lot of very funny things that could be our future. But I think, in real life,
maintain distance, wear a mask, wash your hands, don't share food.
Exactly.
Yeah, things
drink
like
your
that.
own drink.
Drink your own drink.
Don't try the other person's cocktail. Ultimately, it's a stranger. You're meeting a stranger, just as you wouldn't be kissing anybody that walks past you in the street and you would keep a certain distance. To me, it's like common sense. There's nothing really out of ordinary.
And we recognize that people in America and Australia and Europe, a lot of them can't go out at all. They're really on lockdown. Whereas in Hong Kong, we have social distancing rules. We're encouraged to stay at home, but we can go out in groups of 4 or less if you maintain social distance, even though bars are shut. Restaurants are still open. So we're very lucky that we're still able to do that. So I think this advice is for people that are still able to connect. And there are many people around the world that can't connect at all and just have to rely on connecting with
Virtual.
people online. Virtual love.
Either way, I mean, of course, meeting someone in person, you can still go for a walk and maintain a certain distance. I mean, you don't want to walk on opposite sides of the road if you're going for a walk with someone, but decent amount of personal space.
And being outside or in nature is a good idea, isn't it?
Exactly.
Because you're not putting yourself inside environment where you're
Where
sort of in
it's-
more danger with the germs.
Exactly. And now the weather is getting nice. Apparently, the virus cannot survive in hot temperatures.
Is that true though?
I don't know.
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't know if that's true.
They're saying that it wouldn't survive. The hotter it gets, the more likely it is that it will die faster. But whatever, I'm not a specialist, so I have no idea. Just common sense, like follow the basic rules. Wash your hands a lot, don't touch, don't hold hands. Go to the park instead of going to the restaurant. Don't exchange cigarettes, like don't smoke the same joint, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. All these things that you've got to consider. And it's going to be maybe the new way that people, when they can connect again, will start dating, because we don't know how long this is going to go on for. And even if the laws get a little bit more laxed across the world, maybe people will be a bit more cautious when they start dating again.
Well, I think it will become part of the new culture. I feel that the new greeting is going to be stay safe. In Hong Kong, we've had this greeting since the protest last summer. I felt that.
I thought you were going to say since SARS in 2002
No.
or whatever.
I mean,
it was.
I've been here since 2004. In fact, yesterday was my 16th anniversary of being in Hong Kong.
Oh, I just had my 20th anniversary
Oh,
last
wow.
week.
Awesome. So we came to Hong Kong around the same time of the year. So I don't know exactly what was happening with SARS because I came right after. But I feel that since the protests last summer, a lot of our conversations, or when you said goodbye to someone, you did say stay safe. And now with the virus, it's kind of becoming part of the everyday lingo. And I don't think sneezing is going to be bless you so much from now on.
No, it's going to be quick, get away from me.
Like, where's your mask?
Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
sick? Is that COVID?
Did you know that Match.com have a dating while distancing hotline in the USA? So they've just created this.
I think it's a great idea.
Do you think that they're giving people advice on how to date safely in today's COVID climate?
I would have to check that out. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I think because our previous patterns of behavior was very much chat online, maybe have a phone call. I think a lot of people don't really know how to connect without saying, okay, let's go for a drink. And to me, it's like the sort of coaching that I do. I help my clients to figure out what questions to ask, what's important to you, how do you screen someone before you waste too much time? Because with the whole distancing thing, it's very easy to create this false sense of chemistry and connection that because you can't check it in person. In my book about winning the dating game, I suggest to clients that, look, if you want to spend a few days, 2 or 3 days, maybe a week, screening that person, asking important questions, determine if your basic standards and requirements are met, and then move for a meeting in real life. Because that's the only way you will verify whether that sense of chemistry is real or whether it's your fantasy and you're actually in an imaginationship instead of a relationship.
I love that term. That's great.
Well, most of us are actually in imaginationships most of the time.
Yeah, that's because we're alone.
And because we always create our own fantasy of that relationship. So an imaginationship is an imaginary relationship. And when you only know someone online, it is an imaginary relationship. You create this picture of who this person is based on the answers that they give you.
Explain some of your key tips for screening that people should implement while they're dating virtually.
Or any sort of...
or any dating, really, yeah.
So for me, there are 3 key factors to consider when you meet someone. First of all, you need to know what you're looking for. You need to have a clear vision of what you're after. What is your reason for being there? If you want to meet the love of your life, you kind of need to decide what that looks like, who that person is, what sort of relationship you want to have. Then you need to determine what your basic criteria, what I call relationship requirements or deal breakers. So if you understand what your deal breakers are, that's how you screen. So you have to ask questions that would give you an idea of whether those standards are met, things that are important to you. So you need to know you have a vision, you need to understand your deal breakers, and you need to understand the core values, that the things that you believe in, but also what are the values that you want to share with a partner. Because without these things, it's going to be very much a relationship based on chemistry. And because the chemistry online is somehow fake, based on your imagination, you can get into a lot of trouble. Because let's say it's going to take 2 months until you can meet this person. In 2 months, you could already in your head have created a whole story that you meet in person and the guy is not even real.
Yeah, so one of the things you need to do is really listen to what they're saying and don't imagine things that aren't presented to you, because we do all fantasize about things when they're not really true.
Exactly. So I use a paradigm that is called facts, judgments, feelings. So when you ask questions to verify that your requirements are met, try to focus on the facts. What is the person telling you? How can you verify that? Trust is important in a relationship, and it's good to trust someone if you get a good feeling, but also verify. As we were talking earlier about someone who says they're in Germany, just check that distance. Like, use the tools that you have. If someone says, oh, I'm in Japan, and they have a phone number from the UK, the facts don't match, which is another red flag, by the way, to go back to the earlier conversation. The more inconsistencies in someone's story, the more you need to actually verify that what they're telling you is true. If you go by judgments, which means you're looking at what they're telling you and you're taking that answer for granted, you may easily feel that there is this incredible connection with this person and you are like so attracted to them. But actually, these factors, vision, requirements, and values are your fundamental screening criteria. What we tend to do in normal life, we do something that I call screening in, which means we make excuses for people. We fill in the gaps. We make assumptions about them from very little information. We generalize, we imply. So what we're doing is we're looking for reasons why the relationship would work. And that's how we create a fantasy. What I teach my clients to do is a technique called screening out, which means looking for reasons why the relationship would not work. And one fundamental aspect of that is that your deal breakers, which we all have between 6 and 12, let's say, things that are really fundamental and we're not willing to negotiate on, are so powerful that if only one of them is not met, that's already a reason to say no. So I was mentioning before we started that I manifested a boyfriend recently. So I actually had a list of 10 things that I said, okay, this is how my future boyfriend is going to be. So I wrote this list in January, and then in mid-February, I basically manifested this person in my life. And after 3 days together, it was like, wow, damn, you meet every single thing. It's tick, 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 tick. And then as we started to sort of explore this relationship, I realized that I had missed 2 important things: being ready and available for a relationship, which are quite fundamental. So then I had to adjust my list, and now I have to manifest someone who's also meeting those 2 ones. But the point I'm making, if you notice, screening out is you being so thorough in checking that all the items on your list, and it's not a wish list, it's a very specific list of things that you cannot possibly tolerate in a relationship. If one of them is not met, you're better off just saying no right now.
Like, for example, I do not want to date someone who's a heavy drinker. I do not want it. It's a deal breaker.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you
I
need
think
to
there was
find
one
out.
of your stories
Yeah.
in your book, right?
Yeah,
The
it
guy
was.
from
That's
Shenzhen,
right?
right?
He was, yeah, a really heavy drinker.
Right.
And I chose to ignore it or make excuses when it was very clear. Well, he hid it from me, but it became clear.
And you still chose to be blind to it
Yes,
for a bit, right?
I did. But that uneasy feeling in my stomach started to develop. That was one of the deal breakers that made me feel uncomfortable. And I didn't trust my gut. And again, it was a disaster.
Yes.
Read my book if you want to hear more about that, folks. Fool Me Twice, because that's not in the podcast, that one.
Oh, yeah,
that one's
that's
in
true.
the book. I don't think it's in the podcast.
See,
I can't remember.
now you know that I read your book.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we were talking about it earlier when I was researching. They're the ones that recommended that people watch a movie together, cook a meal together, or eat simultaneously over video chat. And that's the way that you can dig deeper with your potential partner and learn more about the deal breakers and kind of what you want in a relationship before you actually meet them. Do you think that that's a good idea, doing those activities together?
I think with that, you are exploring shared interests. You are exploring these kind of like the soft touches of what is your fundamental reason to connect with this person. In fact, in an hour's time, when we finish this, I'm going to do a webinar on the 5 love languages. And actually, doing activities together is part of the quality time love language. So, doing things together as a couple, even as a potential couple, it's actually a really good thing, because actually cooking together with your significant other can be either a disaster because either he keeps, I don't know, leaving dirty dishes everywhere, or he keeps washing everything after you and gets in your feet and all that. Or you actually find that you have this really good balance of splitting tasks and, okay, you do that, I do that, everything is fine, and we're like a well-oiled machine. So it can actually test your compatibility in kind of weird ways. And, like in normal, let's say, real life dating, it's quite common for people to cook for each other, like on a second date or third date or something like that. So it is a good connection ritual.
So that's something that you could do virtually. Like you could both agree to cook like lasagna together, but you cook it in your own home with your screens on and then sit down and eat together.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's companionship.
It is. And it's doing an activity where you're sort of doing something and you're getting to know somebody and you're not just sitting there quizzing them.
Exactly.
And so it's quite a nice idea. And I mean, I'm sure you can even like play words with friends together and be on video, or play backgammon online, or there's so many things. You could even go for a walk together, but separately.
You can dance. You can
dance.
You can have a party. You can have drinks. Yeah. You can have everything. I mean, we're on our phones. We're on our screens all the time anyway.
So we're used to that way of operating. It's just moving it into the dating world in a greater kind of amount than we normally do.
Well, until now, we were all complaining that social media is stealing us from each other. Now it can bring us together. And it's an interesting reversal of all the things that we were bitching about before are now becoming the way we are surviving this crisis.
It's really interesting because Plenty of Fish have introduced a live streaming function on their website now. So they're even integrating that ability to video conference with somebody on their actual platform. Do you think that's going to become more common in all of these apps and dating websites?
I think if this lockdown continues in places where people are not going to even know when there's a chance of coming out of the house, they're going to start adopting all these new technologies, because I think one of the biggest lessons in this crisis is how much we really crave human connection, how interconnected and linked we are.
And it really is amazing, isn't it? Because when I do get out to meet somebody or see them, I feel so excited. Like it really makes me feel joyful because I live on my own. This is our 12th week of social distancing in Hong Kong. So I've spent the majority of 12 weeks home alone. So when I do get the chance to get out, and I recognize that there are people listening who can't get out at all, and I'm sorry for your situation. We're very lucky here in Hong Kong. And I think it's down to the fact that everyone wears masks and everyone is super disciplined with their hygiene. Everybody's following rules. People in Hong Kong are very compliant. Then we've got great medical systems. We've got free testing. We've got a free medical support. And we have the experience of having SARS originally as well. So all of those factors have meant, and we're ahead of everyone else. We're 12 weeks in when Australia
it's
are
like
a month
normal
in.
for us. It's like, okay, what's with this thing? It's just life.
And if you look at our stats just in the last 4 days, there was 4, 3, 1 yesterday.
Today, 1 case.
Yeah,
yesterday,
today,
right?
1 case, I think. So we seem to be getting it under control, but that doesn't mean we can get complacent.
No, exactly. And actually, I'm a little bit scared about how last weekend everyone was out.
Yes, Easter did mean people got together more. And I think China are lifting some restrictions on lockdown. So we might see a spike, and we definitely can't get complacent.
Hope not. Because I was talking to someone in the UK who told me that she has not had human contact in real life for like 6 weeks.
Oh, see, that's so hard, isn't it? No one, yeah. So I do recognise that we're very lucky here, and I don't want to be rubbing it in people's faces.
Same. I'm thinking I'm not even going to post anything.
No, I posted one thing and got criticism, and it's like, oh my gosh, take it down. But having said that, like, I've really only had 3 outings in 12 weeks where I've connected with people and they've been all outdoors.
I
Do you
miss
know
clubbing.
what I mean? Yeah. Oh God, clubbing. What was that? I haven't done that since my 40s.
Oh, well, then you don't miss it.
No. But I think we definitely do realise the need for connection and human contact and how much other people really make an impact in our lives.
And I think because this is such a fundamental need, we will come up with a lot of new solutions that will help us make this connection, even if it's not really in person. And we will use the technology. We'll kind of push back the technology to what I thought was the original role, which is to enable human connection as opposed to keep us apart from each other, which we kind of thought was doing, stop staring at your phone all the time. Well, now you're going to stop staring at your phone because your loved one is going to be on that screen. So it's actually connecting you with each other. So overall, I really see this whole pandemic as a massive opportunity for us to kind of reinvent the way we connect with each other as human beings and to also realize how valuable that is, because we don't know what you got till it's gone, right?
And it has gone, and it's been really hard. Do you think with things relaxing a little bit in Hong Kong, or feeling like they're relaxing, that people should get out and meet other people? Or do you think that they should still date safely virtually at the moment?
I mean, if you do it smartly, if you limit your contact, if you track the contacts, if you make sure that the people you're meeting are not going, I don't know, not that anyone is going to clubs or anybody is really exposing themselves or traveling. In fact, I had clients the other day who said before they came for the session, they asked me, have you been anywhere in the last 2 weeks? Have you had any known contact with someone who has COVID? And I obviously said no, because that didn't happen. But they said, do you mind if we wear masks in the session? Because of course, there's 3 of us in this small room here. It makes sense if you want to protect yourself, they have a child. For dating, I have been on a couple of dates a few weeks ago where the other person came wearing a mask. And then we kind of decided later in the evening that, okay, we're sitting across from each other at the table. We don't have to exaggerate this whole thing. But it also doesn't mean that we're going to be snogging all night. So I think these are some basic rules. It doesn't mean that you cannot go on a date if you just go for a walk on the harbor and maybe bring a bottle of wine and sit across each other on a blanket in the park or something. But again, do it smartly.
Do you think that the coronavirus has placed dating, like a lot of other things in life, in a state of suspended animation? Or do you think people are really moving into this new form of dating that we're talking about?
I think to start with, in the beginning, especially if you are in full lockdown, it's going to take a while for people to adjust to this because the usual rules of dating no longer applying, and also people believing that it's a temporary thing, there will be resistance. I'm sure across the globe, not so much in Hong Kong because we've had it for so long, but I'm still hearing people saying, oh, I can't wait for things to go back to normal. Reality is there is no going back, in my opinion. We are not going back to how things were. We're going to create a new world. And crisis usually gives birth to a completely new reality. So I think it's an opportunity for all of us to rethink how we engage this idea of romantic connection, to give ourselves more time to do it in a new right way. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. And yes, definitely, like I said, technology startups are definitely looking into live streaming, having dinner together on Zoom. I saw something on Instagram the other day. It was a joke, obviously, but someone says, okay, I think I'm pioneering orgies on Zoom. Who was in? I mean, people should still rediscover the lost art of phone sex. It's absolutely great.
Do you feel it is a lost art, do you? Because people don't talk on the phone anymore.
Yes.
Everyone texts.
Literally, I was talking to some people. I'm like, oh, well, it's not so tough. Just enjoy some phone sex. Like, oh, phone sex? What's that? That sounds boring. I'm like, dude, you know nothing. Phone sex is awesome.
Phone sex is from the 90s, isn't it?
Exactly, when all you had was phone. You
didn't have anything else.
I was in a 1.5 years long distance relationship when I was 25, so I did perfect that art back then.
Yeah, brilliant.
I could teach it now.
You mentioned earlier just about the 5 love languages. Tell us a little bit about that before we wrap up this lovely COVID dating experience.
Well, my webinar is free at 6:00 today, but I know
unfortunately the podcast won't be out by then.
I know. So the 5 love languages It's based on a book by a therapist called Dr. Gary Chapman, and it's very well known in the space of therapy and couples counseling. He actually discovered that essentially when we show our affection to people in our life, we all have different ways of doing that, of showing our love. And the vast majority of couples struggle with appreciation because they simply speak different languages. What makes me happy or what makes me feel appreciated is very different potentially to what makes my partner feel appreciated. But because I think that this is the only way that love works, I'm going to give him all these signs that make me happy, and they will go over somebody's head because they don't value it. So the 5 love languages are quality time, which means you spend time together doing things like cooking, doing gardening, learning a new hobby, doing wine tasting, whatever it is. But as long as it's not on the phone, well, now it can be on the phone.
Yeah, adjust that
but
for
not
now.
to keep you away from each other, but to bring you together. You can, I don't know, play board games if you're really that bored or something. As long as you spend quality time together, you are present with your partner, you are asking them questions, and the other person feels seen, heard, understood, that is really a great way for quality time people to feel appreciated. Second one is a physical touch. Most people misinterpret this for people who are like sex addicts or like, oh, you always touch me when you want sex. But actually, physical touch as a love language, it's more about feeling safe and feeling a connection, a physical connection with the other person. And it can mean hugging in the morning and like when you leave home and when you come back. It can mean casually touching your partner. It can mean giving someone a foot rub. It could mean
Holding
I don't
hands
know,
while you're
holding
walking down the
hands.
street. Yeah.
Absolutely. It could mean just random hugs or
But wash them afterwards now.
Absolutely. Yes, especially if you touch random people or just rubbing their hair or something like that. Or, of course, cuddling when you go to bed and all that stuff. But, it tends to be the case that sometimes one of you is like very much into physical touch and the other was like, oh, don't touch me. I dated someone last year who was like very cuddly while we were together. But then when we went to sleep, he like literally went the other side of the bed is like, do not touch me because I'm going to go crazy. I'm like, oh, okay, that's weird. I like physical touch. I like to be cuddled. The third one is words of affirmation, which means that for some people it's really important to receive compliments, to be told that they're beautiful, to be told that they're doing a great job being a mother. The fourth one is acts of service. And that doesn't mean being someone's slave. It means doing little thoughtful things for me that make me feel that we're a team. So an acts of service person, I am very much an acts of service person, wants to share, if you like, the burden of life with someone. So if I do things and you're offering to help me without me asking you, it is a great sign that you love me because it means that you see that I struggle. You see that I need help and I don't have to ask you. So do things for me without me having. If I have to tell you to fix the bathroom door 10 times, that is not an act of service because I've been nagging you and I'm already upset. The fifth one is receiving gifts. For some people, receiving gifts is the biggest sign of love. And this is not about the value of the gift. It's not that I have to receive a diamond every single day. It's actually, if you bring me a seashell because it reminds you of the last time we had dinner on the beach or something, it's much more valuable to me to know that you treasure that moment. So that gift is just a symbol of something that we did together, of a memory. So depending on where you are on this spectrum, you will feel loved or not loved if your partner expresses that in the right way. In this webinar, I'm actually giving people like one by one instructions. You may be one of this. Your main love language could be this if you like XYZ. And if your partner is, let's say, a words of affirmation person, you need to do these 10 things for them.
Right. Oh, that's great. And if you think about it, you can really do all of these 5 love languages except physical touch at the moment in COVID-19 while we're dating under the coronavirus.
Well, the good news is that even if physical touch is your core language, we usually have at least 2 that are very meaningful to us. So you can have quality time and physical touch, or words of affirmation and physical touch. So if physical touch is actually impossible during social distancing, you can just overload on the other one.
Okay, which is great advice.
You can still spend quality time.
That's lovely to think that, all but one of those love languages can still be activated or utilized while you're virtually dating during the virus. And I think the last thing I wanted to ask you is just about platforms that we could recommend to people. So I can think of Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, Google Hangouts, and also there's an app called House Party. Have you heard of that?
Oh, no.
There's a new app called House Party where you can get together with friends and have a house party virtually.
It sounds like pretty much everyone is going to try to do some sort of community option.
Is there anything else that you can think of that I've missed?
I think there are actually going to be a lot of startups who look into this.
Yeah.
I mentioned
because, like you said, the nature of dating is going to evolve and change over the coming years.
So like I said, this startup in Canada reached out to me, and they've been working actually for about half a year on creating this platform where people can have like online speed dating events. And they're obviously going to keep growing it with different services and all that. I think you're right. A lot of the current existing dating apps will also move into this space of creating hangouts or whatever words they're going to use for it to allow people to create this connection during distancing.
I think so. And also the other thing to think about at the moment is people can't really travel during this time. So do you think that people should be thinking about connecting with people just in their area when they're meeting online? Because it could be a long, long time before you could actually go to meet somebody in another country.
For entertainment purposes, yes. For building a long-term relationship, I wouldn't necessarily waste my time. Because a lot of people right now, like I said, Tinder took on that opportunity and makes it easy for people to swipe around the world. But not knowing when travel will resume, do I really want to spend the next 3 months of my life falling in love virtually with someone who lives in Guadalajara, Mexico? Because who knows if the travel industry is going to be the same when we come out of this? Who knows how expensive it's going to be to fly with the potential of so many airlines going bust during this time. So it may not be like tomorrow the restrictions are over, like, oh, Donald Trump, okay, we're going to make it easy. If 90% of the aviation industry dies because there's no real business, the travel is going to be hugely more expensive. We're going to have a lot of time to come back to any new normal, whatever that is.
Yeah,
so I
that's
wouldn't
really
want to do
true.
that.
I hadn't thought of that, but you're absolutely right. So
It may not be like you spend 35 pounds and you go to Spain in your weekend anymore next time. I mean, I'm hoping that everyone will still be around and everyone will, like, there were all sorts of things on Instagram with everybody like going on top of planes, like the trains in India, just desperate to go on holiday this summer. But it may not happen. We don't really know.
I don't think we'll be going anywhere this summer. I really don't. Even if things are manageable and going well here in Hong Kong, I don't think we'll necessarily be able to go to other countries. And it might be just not worth the risk as well.
Exactly, because different countries have been handling this whole thing differently. They keep saying that people can get reinfected with the virus, so you don't develop immunity. In fact, yesterday I learned that for the first time, I realized that one of my friends has the virus, and I was speaking to her. She's still in hospital. She's been in hospital for 24 days.
Has she?
And she's still not clear.
In Hong Kong?
In Hong Kong, yeah.
Oh, wow.
The viral load is not going down.
Was she a traveler or did she get it
No,
locally?
her husband got infected in the office and passed it on to her.
Oh, gosh.
And she's someone I used to work with, but I haven't seen in a long time, so I'm
Yeah,
safe.
yeah,
but that's
sure.
not the point. The point is
it's getting closer and
it's
closer.
close.
That's why we still need to be vigilant. And for anybody out there who's thinking, oh gosh, they've got such relaxed attitudes in Hong Kong, we haven't. We haven't.
But that's the good thing, that people are not relaxing, really, that everyone is still giving you bad looks on the street if you're not wearing a mask. And people are like not touching you.
I was walking down Queen's Road the other day and I was looking around to see if I could see anyone without a mask on, and I couldn't see anybody not
very
wearing
few.
one.
Seriously, I've been in a situation where I forgot to take a mask and I went to the pharmacy and I bought a whole box, even though I had loads
at home because you needed one.
Because I just thought, what, I can't be bothered to go back home. I'll just go and do it.
And the WHO have come out recently and said that wearing masks is definitely a good idea and it reduces the risk.
Yeah.
And Hong Kong is evidence of that.
Exactly.
Everybody's been wearing the masks right from the beginning. Well, all the Chinese people have and the Westerners have got on board now. It took us perhaps
I'm looking
a
forward
bit more of
to
a...
seeing how the mask will become a regular fashion item and how we're going to use it all the time.
Yeah, that could be the new normal as well. I mean, I was
Exactly.
wondering that when I was traveling around on that day, thinking, will people just do this for a long, long time now?
I think
regardless
at
of
least a couple of years,
Yeah.
especially if this thing A vaccine takes a while.
If they can create one, we don't even know.
Technically, it should be possible. I think if there's a will, there's a way. But essentially, it's going to be a while till there's some sort of new normal that we're creating. So I think, again, from an opportunity perspective, sure, there are a lot of challenges. But the human race has always been very creative, and very inventions have been actually triggered by crisis. I think our reality right now wouldn't have happened, for example, if the Second World War didn't happen. We wouldn't have computers. We wouldn't have the level of technology that we have without wars. Even though wars are obviously horrible, they actually pushed civilization in towards progress.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this global pandemic, which is happening at the moment.
Hopefully a better world, a world in which people love each other more and connect with each other better and don't just use each other.
Don't take each other for granted and appreciate each other more.
Exactly, where the 5 languages are coming in.
Well, Valentina, thank you so much for meeting with me today and talking about the new normal of dating in COVID-19. And I think you've given us some great insights, some great ideas, and something to think about how things may change in the future. So thank you so much for this awesome podcast.
Thank you, Jules, for having me on again.
Yeah,
and I look
we'll
forward
do
to our
it
next
again.
one.
Yeah. Our next one, I can't wait. We've got a list of things to cover. For my listeners out there, if this is something that you've really enjoyed and you've got friends or family who are interested in dating during the coronavirus, please can you share this podcast with them? Please go to iTunes to rate and review us, and that will help me get up the iTunes charts and help people find Valentina. How can they find you, Valentina?
My website is happyeverafter.asia. Happy, not happily, which
Perfect.
is what people sometimes feel. I'm also on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram handle is @therealqueenmaker because I believe in empowering women to discover their inner queen. And you can also search for my TED Talk on YouTube, which is all about embracing unconditional love.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I'll put some links in the show notes to all of that for my listeners. And if you would like to sponsor Hong Kong Confidential, you can go to patreon.com/Hong Kong Confidential. And for as little as $1 a month, you'll be able to hear Valentina's answers to the secret questions that I'm going to ask her now. So we're going to sign off here now, and hopefully we'll see you over on Patreon. Thanks a lot, Valentina.
Thank you.
Hi, Confidants. I want to tell you about my Patreon page. I've joined Patreon in the hope of getting sponsorship for my Hong Kong Confidential podcast. Patreon is a great way for my listeners to get on board and sponsor me with monthly payments, and that goes towards my production costs and rewards for my members. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon page, please go to patreon.com and search up Jules Hannaford or Hong Kong Confidential. I would really appreciate you visiting my page. So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's @Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.